Hello guys and welcome back to TalkSport and our second ever car review. Stay tuned. Just how good is a ZC32S Suzuki Swift Sport, and is it the perfect hatch for someone to learn to drive fast in? I don't have those answers, but I guess we're about to find out. So everyone, excuse the probable wind noise and my flappy hair. We are going to find the answer to that question in this video. Now, the Suzuki Swift is a 1.6 litre naturally aspirated engine with about, I think it's 134, 136 horsepower and a really low weight. So I'll put them stats right here now. And yeah, so I'll quickly run you through some of the mods that have been done to this because it's not completely standard. However, later on in the channel it would be nice to maybe review a standard one of these, because this has had a decent amount done but not loads. So I'll run you through what's been done to it right now. So first things first, obviously you're going to see the wheels are two completely different colours. Now that is only because the front wheels were pitted, so they are now being refurbed to like a gunmetal grey, which you can't really see that well because the salty weather, which I'm sure all of you car guys will know, is a pain in the bum. But yeah, they're eventually going to be both this colour, or maybe go back to white. We don't know yet. But they come standard with some really nice, like, I think it's like bi-xenon lights, and they're really, really bright. Probably the brightest lights I've actually driven on in night time. Shortened plates, which suit it and finish it really well. The badge is being done in carbon fibre, so that's why there is no badge. So moving around the car a bit further before we go into the engine bay, the car is sat on teen coilovers, which is a very Japanese thing to have, and Team Dynamic 1.2s all round, which probably take off quite a bit of unsprung weight, and it handles and drives superbly on those. A teen coilover is always good for the road because they're not too stiff really, and they absorb the bumps really well, which again in this country is very important. It has a catback exhaust as well. And moving now into the engine bay, it has a CTC intake as well, which a lot of people, if you're familiar with these cars, are the people to go to for mods. And it just has iridium spark plugs in, and that's all that's been touched to the engine. So it might make a smidge more power, but probably just breathes a little bit better because it's not tuned or nothing like that. So there probably is minor gains to add. I believe CTC do remap for these, which takes it to 150 horsepower, so that would be quite mad to be fair, something to do in the future perhaps. Moving on to the inside of the car, it's very basic but it is all that you need. I'll sit in here to avoid the wind. So the dials remind me a little bit like a GTR kind of style dial, which being a Jap car of similar age, it probably kind of resembles that a little bit. Steering wheel's really nice, not too big, it's quite a good size for nailing around some bends. Now again, like I said, it's quite basic in here, but what more do you really need? And I'll spin round. The seats also are really nice. They're like quite a good bucket for a stock car, and it's more than what you need. Some nice red stitching as well, all the camera stuff. But yeah, generally, really decently well spec'd car. We'll see what it drives like now. So first things first. Now this bit might be a bit boring for those of you that do not care about fuel consumption. However, I do know for a fact that this car on a run you can quite happily achieve mid to low 50s, which is, in this day and age, really what you're after with the way the economy is. Now, even when you stick your foot down and you're having lots of fun on some B roads, or probably even a track, to be fair, I can't imagine you're going to see a great deal lower than late 30 mpgs. Obviously, if you're around a track, you'd probably see low 30s, but which is still really, really good when you think this is a really revvy, naturally aspirated engine. So we now come up to some back roads and have a little bit of fun. You can probably see from my hands, there's such minor steering input to really pull you around the corners, which is exactly what you want in a small, nimble hatch. And I must say, heel and toe in positioning of this for the pedals is so good. Another point I'd love to make about the Suzuki Swift Sport is I feel like it's a very good car nuts first or second car, probably second car. You want to get your first year out of driving, you know. But the second car, like, you want something that you can modify or make nice, that's also really quite capable. I'd say this probably has to be it. Pushing a car like this to its limits around a circuit on a track day for like Snetterton, Brands Hatch, that sort of thing, this would be the perfect car to really learn your car's boundaries in, because it's quite forgiving, but also it's not at the same time. So what I mean by it's quite forgiving is the car's chassis is so good that it does really balance itself out with minimal effort, and that's exactly what you want when you're really learning to push somewhere. However, what I have noticed from driving this, not just in this video but previously, is if you want it to be playful, you can get it to be playful. And again, from a front wheel drive hatch that's a driver's car, that's exactly what you want. The pedal placement is just so good. I wish I could show you guys that. In fact, I might have to spin the camera around just so you can see that. So I'm now coming through a village, obviously just doing 30, and there's a massive pothole just round the bend, and someone's put an upside down child in it. That is a genius idea. Definitely made me double look though. We'll head back through now, see if you can spot the upside down child in the pothole. Look at a big tall leg sticking out of it. That's brilliant. Whoever done that, props off to you. Yeah, after seeing a kid stuffed in a pothole upside down, obviously a pretend kid, we'll carry back on. Yeah, just speaking on a little bit more about the steering. I quite like a heavier steering feel, and this isn't too light. It's kind of a halfway house between what you like. So if you really like it really soft, you're not going to love it. If you like it really heavy, you're probably not going to love it. But if you can compromise somewhere in between, then it feels really great. Being on the teen coilovers, this isn't actually too bouncy either, to be fair. It's quite a nice firmness for UK roads. You go in some potholes and it doesn't sound like you've just snapped your car in half. But it's also firm enough so when you are, you know, bouncing around a little bit, it does really hold its ground well. As for the power, it doesn't lack in power, although you would just really want a tiny bit more. Like I was saying earlier in the intro, the CTC remap probably would make this about perfect, which takes it to around 150 horsepower with their intake. It's not lacking by any means, and the gear ratios are quite long, so where a lot of cars you'd be rowing through the gears, generally second gear probably does you around a lot of bends, which does actually, you'd think being quite a low power car that would really give you a disadvantage, but actually in this, because it's really revvy, it's actually perfect. And where I say it's a lacking on power, it's not really down low or mid-range either, it's just right at the top end as you really get moving. But obviously on closed roads or a circuit up to 100, you're really not going to have any issues keeping up with most things. But it's when you're really up there, obviously the lack of power does show. But the power it lacks of it more than makes up for in its handling. The low down acceleration is actually very impressive, to be fair. Like first to second, again, like I say, because the ratios are so long, it does carry that speed for quite a bit longer. And I notice following this car in my ST, even if you're both going for it, because the ST is quite short ratio in first, second, leading up to third, generally is actually quite a mission to keep up with this between first and second, because where I'm having to change and change, you're still going in this. And the gear ratios aren't so long that you're in fifth at 1000 RPM doing 70. They're just long in the first two gears, which really complements the lower power. The sound of this, for being a little 1.6 naturally aspirated, is actually really up there as well, to be fair. Reminds me of just like a little B16 Civic. Now that is one thing I would say, having been a very big Honda person myself. If you want something a bit more modern and you're not that happy working on your own cars, a Swift Sport, or even the new Swift Sports from what I hear, is a very good alternative to something like an old B series or maybe even the K series Civic. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's not going to be as quick in a straight line, but for sure you can still have just as much fun around the bends. And as a circuit or track day car that's also your daily, I can't think of something that's probably more perfect than this, to be honest. Nice, reliable, really cheap to run, parts are cheap, and as again, round the Nürburgring you see these all the time, they're the rental cars. They've obviously proven their worth around the track, so you can't really argue. These retail from a dealer or garage. I think that they vary really between 4.5 and the upper ends of 7.5, which I know you could be like, oh, you can buy an EP3 for that. Yeah, you can, but one, they're older, and two, they're really rotten. Now, this example was bought for around £7,000, and I believe at the time when it was purchased it had 53,000 miles. So, you know, it's quite a lot of car for the money of its age, and mileage being really low as well. You know, being Japanese fine engineering, you can cave its head in, hit the limmer or the soft limmer that this has, and you don't have to worry at all. Just service it regularly. You know, it's got a timing chain, so you ain't got to worry about doing a belt every 5 minutes. You can't really ask for much more. Now, I don't want to feel like I'm droning on too much, so in a second we're going to be doing some draggy 30 to 70 runs to see where this car charts on the leaderboard. Obviously this is probably one of the least powerful, minus my daily crap box Civic. This probably has the least power on there. However, I don't think it will be far off a lot of the other cars, or as far off as you'd expect. So I'm going to pull up in a minute, get the draggy set up, and we'll get some times. So we're on a road, safe to do so. Let's do some 30 to 70s. We'll pull over and see what time that was. We're going to do one more attempt at 30 to 70. Let's go. It's quite hard to do in this car from what I can tell, because you start so low in the rev range in second that, obviously being a naturally aspirated car, it does take a little while for you to build up power, given that all the power is in the obviously high range of the RPM. So being like a VVTi engine, you actually can almost feel it like a little VTEC engine. About 5.5, you can hear the note change. So you're starting at probably around 2.5, 3,000 RPM. So it's obviously really difficult to get the power band going from 30 miles an hour. So it's quite hard. It's quite a hard test for it, to be fair. But I think the best test we got so far, I'll put on the screen now, is a low 7 seconds, which really isn't bad for a car of less than 140 horsepower. So I pulled up just now, and we're now looking. The best 30 to 70 was a 7.18. But I'm not sure why it says it's invalid, because the slope is actually up rather than down. But with a gradient of 0.76 up, you've got a 7.18 30 to 70, which really ain't too bad. So to conclude this video, the Suzuki Swift Sport is an all-round perfect package. It's got great value for money. You can get like really well spec'd or low mileage examples for circa £6,000. It's really can be really good on fuel, achieving 50 plus mpgs or at least 40 plus on your day-to-day journeys. You know, it's relatively quick enough in a straight line and acceleration. Obviously it's not going to blow your head off in a straight line, but cornering is where this car really comes into its own. And I really would compare it to cars like the Clio RS's and the Civic Type R's, like the EP3 FN2 and like some of the B series cars. It really does just feel like a lower powered one of them. And also what I will say is, you know, in terms of space, like inside of the front and the back, it's really not as small as you would think. The boot room's decent enough. Obviously for a small hatch you're never going to get a great boot, but yeah, for an all-round package I really would recommend one of these cars. Get yourself out there and, you know, test drive one if you're thinking about getting one, but you won't be disappointed. The mod range for these is very broad as well. Like I say, CTC, they do loads of cool bits for these. You got all the people and companies. I will have to finish my video on here because my camera just died, which is always helpful. But yeah, as I was saying, CTC Performance do a really cool range of parts as a UK supplier, and they do supply all around, but it's really handy for those of you in UK with a Swift Sport that want parts. And also, I believe it's Nengen Performance, or I don't know how exactly you pronounce that, but they're in Japan, and obviously they race these all over the place in Japan. They do some really cool body kits, performance parts, like even forged engine bits and cams and all kinds of mad stuff you can get for these. So the modding range for these are actually, as I say, very broad. Not so much in this country, but you can get hosts and hosts of parts for these, both mechanical and visual, to make them look really cool. So, is the Suzuki Swift Sport the perfect all-round car for learning to hoon or to drive around the circuit with, or even just as a really fun B-road basher? The answer is yes, and I hope my video has represented that well to you. It's just such a fun all-round car that makes you feel like a little teenager again, razzing around in quite a fast little hatch. And that's what the hatchback should still be all about. And I feel like nowadays, crazy hatchbacks like the Civic Type R's and the RS3s and that, they don't give you that anymore. Not something you can, you know, quite happily just chuck around and whatnot. You know, all these cars now have got 400 horsepower and they're just mental. So I think for keeping it simple, really usable, fun, playful, and again loads of character, like having a Revy NA engine that you really got to rev out, I don't think, again, like I say, I can recommend anything better than something like a Swift Sport. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, comment anything you'd like to see down below. Don't forget to subscribe. See you on the next one. Bye for now.